Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order. I think we'll skip the Pledge of Allegiance. We did it earlier today. If that's all right with everyone? Yep. No? You're going to cry? We just did it a couple hours ago, so. All right. So then that would bring us to roll call.
Commissioner Ansorgi.
Here.
Commissioner Rushton.
Present.
Chairman Bonnick.
Here.
Commissioner Wessel.
Here.
Commissioner Sudis-Little.
Here.
Commissioner Rettenbach.
Here.
Commissioner Lautner.
Present.
All present.
Thank you. So that brings us to communications, proclamations, and presentations. And we have the 86th District Court update. Judge Stockton's here.
Well, I thought Judge Stephan was going to join us as well, but we're going to start, and if he comes in, he can join us. So thank you for having us again. We always enjoy coming out and doing our annual report. I'm Carol Stocking, the court administrator, and
Bob Cooney, your new district court judge.
So I want to start out by saying thank you for your approval of the hiring of a deputy court administrator. She has been invaluable. And I'm telling you, I don't know, well, I do know why. We have worked very hard in making our court paperless, and so we're making some transition in that regard, along with the Michigan Indigent Defense Council program, where we have to have attorneys at first appearance with and anyone who comes through the court system. Those two projects have been just overwhelming and a lot of work. So Dawn has been, she has said, I don't know how you did all this, and I said, I don't know either. It's like it's overwhelming at times. So with that being said, she did do the annual report this year. I'm not going to read it to you or go through it page by page, but I will say that, as I said to a couple of you when I first walked in, the annual report to us is important because it's like a history lesson. It's a point in time that tells us what we did this year and what our statistics are, so that we can look back. Sometimes we'll say, when did we do this? Or, what happened in 2005? We can look back at our annual reports because obviously some of us can't remember. He can remember everything, but some of us can't remember. And so we can look at these annual reports, and that tells us, a little bit of our history. So just to kind of a couple of highlights in here, Judge Stepka's forward, as well as Dawn's court administrator summary, talked about the Michigan Indigent Defense Program, as well as the paperless project. Obviously, Judge Phillips retired and Judge Cooney was elected, and so that's all included in here. I'm not going to steal some thunder that I know that Judge Cooney wants to talk about. Other than that, I will say that the caseload numbers are pretty static. There's not real big changes one way or another. The court revenue was down a little bit, but again, not significant enough to make to be concerned about. I mean, I think, with that being said, I would entertain any questions you have of me, but I do know that the judges may also want to say something.
Carol, in your court administration thing, there's a thing about that Antrim and Grand Traverse counties were 99% timely submission of abstracts. What's going on with Leelanau County? So
that's a good question. As percentages are calculated, the smaller the numbers, the harder the percentage is to keep high. So Grand Traverse and Antrim County caseload numbers are bigger, and so it's easier for them to get a 99%. Antrim or Leelanau County's numbers are so small that it might only really be 2 errors, but it might have taken the percentage down to 92%. So it really isn't anything significant or important to worry about. It's just the sheer numbers are low. Other questions for me?
Any other questions?
I know Judge Cooney has something he'd like to say.
I have
I'm sorry.
just one, and maybe you'll get into that. You spoke about the revenues being down, and without going into a lot of detail on that, could that possibly be a good sign? Because aren't there a lot of fees and penalties that make up that revenue?
So the revenue is made up of court costs
Mhm.
that stay local here at the county, fines that go to the library, and then other fees that get sent to agencies such as the state of Michigan, Michigan State Police, DNR, things like that.
Right.
So it really,
So if the revenues are down, then it's because we're not collecting those fees, is it, that's a good
it's
sign?
not a good thing. You want
Isn't it
more
good for
revenue.
the well, we need the revenue, isn't it good to
The
say
case-
that the public is, I mean, is it less cases, I guess that's where.
It could be less cases too. So if you look at your caseload numbers.
Felonies are down.
Felonies are down. Misdemeanors are down a little bit as well. Everything is down slightly, so that certainly will have an impact on your revenue. On page 20, the post-judgment filings, that's all revenue. People file paperwork with the court to try to collect on their small claims or their general civil cases, and that's down significantly too. So it really is all about the filings and the caseload being down a bit.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else?
I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about the successes of the specialty courts.
I'd be glad to do that, and I was going to bring up tonight that we graduated our first two folks through the drug court program. If you're not real familiar with that, it's a 2.5 to 3 year probationary program. These are folks that start out on a felony probation, generally a drug crime involving heroin or cocaine or methamphetamine, and they have a serious drug issue, and after a year the prosecutor agrees to lower the charge to a 1-year misdemeanor as an incentive to get in the program. It's a very intensive probation, and it's just great to know that we've got people who have graduated, and the people that have graduated, they've had very few setbacks along the way. And I just want to throw out a statistics here that for someone who's addicted to a substance like opioids, the average recidivism rate is something like 72 hours. I've heard 72 hours, and I've heard, something close to that. But in our program, we've had people who have been abstinent for more than 2.5 years. And that's just amazing when you think about, and when I talk about 72 hours, that's for someone that just goes to jail or prison. They get out in 3 months, they get out in a year, they get out in 7 years. It doesn't matter. They're right back to their old ways because we haven't done anything to treat the problem. So I'm real excited about the results that we're seeing so far. We've had some people that are unsuccessful, and I see that as maybe a fault with our program, that we need to do more to try to keep these people in the program and try to be successful, because it's just safer for the whole community and better for the whole community if we can fix the underlying problems. Judge Stepka's sobriety court tonight, I won't say too much, but that's a huge success story. We've got, I think it's the best recidivism record in the state for a sobriety court, and so that's really remarkable, and people don't know that generally, but 4% versus something like 48% recidivism rate if people don't go through that program. So.
Right, so the drug court's relatively new. I think this fall it'll be 2 years old. That was started by Judge Phillips. The sobriety court...
3 years old.
3 years old? Okay. Thanks. The sobriety court began in 2001. Judge Haley started that, and I was fortunate enough to take that over in 2015. I think you're all familiar with the sobriety court. The statistics are really good for our court in terms of a low recidivism rate. It hovers around the 4%. I'm not sure if it's there right now, but it hovers around that. I think it was 3 years ago now, we received a favorable mention from the Michigan Supreme Court for having the lowest recidivism rate in that court. I don't know where we'll be this year, but we're always really low in terms of recidivism. And that is based on graduates of the sobriety court program versus people who were on traditional probation, did not go through a sobriety court. And then it's still above the state average for recidivism in terms of sobriety court graduates from other courts. We're still much lower than them. And of course, it's a great program for repeat drunk drivers. It treats the problem like Judge Cooney indicated and keeps the public safe, saves jail bed days, and returns people back to their families and being productive members of society. We also have a community outreach court, which you may or may not have heard of. That's a court that it's a bit different than sobriety and drug court. That court assists folks who are either homeless or on the verge of becoming homeless. The way it works briefly is these folks don't have an active case in the district court, but they partner with outside agencies like Catechumen Services, Addiction Treatment Services, Father Fred, and some others. And if they work for a period of time, at least 6 months usually, sometimes well no longer than a year, and if they're successful working with those agencies, then what we do is we wipe out all of their past court fees and costs, which they all have when they come into this court, and cancel any bench warrants they have. So the theory is to lift them up by, in exchange for them receiving services and bettering themselves through these agencies, and we get rid of the costs that are a burden to them, or sometimes they don't take care of them, but once we wipe them out, they're hopefully lifted up to be able to afford housing and other things in life. So Judge Phillips gets the credit for that. He started that. Maybe that's the 2-year-old court this fall. Yeah. So yeah, we're really proud of our specialty courts.
The other thing I should mention is we're just starting a veterans treatment court, and it's something that we've tried before in Grand Traverse County. I think there were some mistakes made along the way in the past, and we've actually got some training coming up in September with folks from the national organization that does veterans courts and does a lot of research on them, and so we're going to be training to do it right. And the main goal with veterans is to get them connected with the Veterans Affairs Department, because a lot of veterans are not taking advantage of all the treatment that is available through the VA at no cost to the county. It's all out there and it's available. And so that's something I'm excited about. The problem is always with veterans, the numbers are fairly low, so running a traditional veterans court in this area, you've got to modify it some way to make it work, and I think that we can do that and make it effective. So that's something that we've already kind of started it, but started the ball rolling anyway, and I think it's going to be a good thing anyway.
Commissioner.
I would just like to thank all of you for the efforts that you do put into these specialty courts. We, as a community, reap the rewards of the work that you do. And I just want to say on my behalf that I appreciate the work that you do. And we do see a difference in our community for it, so thank you.
Thank you for your support, because we really appreciate it. Anytime you can talk to your constituents about the court, mention treatment courts, because it is a huge, we're keeping people out of the jail beds, we're saving the county's money that way, and we're just fixing a lot of families and individuals, and it's a good thing.
And I think even something as small as in Judge Cooney's drug court, all of those folks are felons, and how many are there in there? 20-some right now?
23, I think.
Every single one of them are employed. They have jobs.
I make them.
I think that's significant. It's hard for a person with a felony to get a job, and they're all employed, and that's meaningful.
Very. Yep, good job.
And just in terms of numbers too, sorry, the sobriety court usually has around 100 folks in it. About 60% start as felonies, and if they're successful, then they're reduced down to a misdemeanor. So those are the numbers of the sobriety court. I want to mention too that this board's been especially kind to us over the years, so we do really, really appreciate that as well. You've allowed us to, continue functioning the way we function and to continue serving the public, so thanks.
I wanted to mention something Carol brought up, and that is thanking you for, you and the other boards for approving the deputy administrator. Now, I'm fairly new here. I've been here 6 months with the court, but I can tell you there's no way Carol could have the time to do all the special projects like setting up a veterans treatment court without having some assistance. And I've seen that very clearly, that, I wondered how she did it before without Dawn. And so I think when you've got a staff of 35 employees and as much as is going on in our 3 courts, that it's essential, and it's allowing us to do a lot of extra things that we could not do otherwise. I think it was necessary just to maintain basic functioning of the court. The 2 projects that Carol talked about, MIDC having an attorney at every hearing where someone is placed in jeopardy of going to jail, that's been a huge transition to go through for all of our staff. And then the transition to electronic records for our criminal cases has also been huge. And so I don't think that we could have done that, and I don't think we'd be as far as we are if we didn't have a deputy administrator right now. And the MIDC attorneys, that's something required by the state, so it's not some luxury, it was something that we were required to do. So anyway, and the only thing else that I want to say is I really appreciate the county board support. I appreciate all the staff we have on the court, Maureen and Cindy, and Sarah Lorgan is our new probation officer up there. They're doing a great job, so you're very lucky.
Commissioner Ansel.
If we have any feedback from the legislature about funding for the court by the end of next year, I haven't heard anything about, whether they're going to change how we fund our courts. So, we're not doing so much on the people, appearing in court. It's kind of a burdensome thing. It kind of looks bad when, the court's assigning costs, and it's like, are you really, it just doesn't look right. And I've heard that there's some effort out there to try to get the legislature by the end of, next year, that they got to do something. Have you heard anything?
Yes, there's a state court funding commission that was just recently formed, and they just issued their first report making suggestions to the legislature on courts being funded by the state. But I've not heard, I don't think it's in the report, I read it, of any end of 2020 that the state is funding the courts. But I'll tell you what, I can get you all a copy of that. It just came out, I think, within the last couple of weeks, maybe a bit longer than that. But that requires legislation to yeah. So I don't think they have any deadline by which it needs to be enacted. I think it's just right now, it's moving, it's going in the right direction, I think, to take the burden off the counties. But right now, it's just the commission, and they issued their first report recently. So I think it has a ways to go. Something else that just happened, let's see, I think it was late last week, the Michigan Supreme Court affirmed a trial court in Detroit that assessed an individual fines and costs. That person appealed that assessment, arguing that it was an unconstitutional tax by the court against the county against this individual. Michigan Court of Appeals said no, it is not. That's how courts fund themselves. It's a reasonably related cost, and the fines and costs in each individual case. And finally, well, fines and costs in criminal cases only. It's reasonable to the costs that the court incurs to run as a court to serve the public. So that was an important decision that all courts have been waiting on for many months. So that is now final. We can still continue assessing court costs and fines. I agree, it's not, it doesn't look good at times in various cases, but that's the way we have to help fund ourselves.
And I heard Milt Mack is the head of the State Court Administrator's Office, and he is pushing very hard, and the Supreme Court listens to Milt, I can tell you that. But he is pushing very hard to have 100% state funding for courts in the state. He wants, in fact, you know how the judges get some money from the county and some money from they want to change that. I've heard him talk about this a couple times now. So the judges are completely paid by the state, the counties are left out of that. They want to make sure that the funding formula is changed so that the fines and costs that we're collecting are not going to support court operations. The state is fully funding those operations. And there's a lot of details to be worked out there, but that is his goal. It's right at the top of his list. And if anyone can make that happen, I think it's Milt. And so that's where I think I see things headed here. So my big concern is with MIDC, we're finding out that we have to have more attorneys, more defense attorneys to handle that efficiently. And as those costs go up, I just wonder, is the state really going to come through on its promise to fund that mandate? I'm keeping my eye on that anyway, but that's the promise.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Seeing none, thank you very, very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
With that, we'll move on to, there are no minutes that I know of. Okay. So approval of the agenda, we have one late addition and one change. We're going to eliminate number 3 as a renewal of agreement for the animal control and replace it with the sheriff's late addition number 3.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? We now have an agenda. That brings us to public comment. Seeing none, we'll move forward then to our action items. And the first thing is probate and family court reimbursement request. Commissioner Rettner.
I move to approve the contract between the Ottawa County Juvenile Detention Center and the Leelanau County Family Court.
No, we're actually the one.
First one.
1A.
1A.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Well,
Commissioner West.
I move to approve the payments to reimbursement request from Teresa Larson totaling $88.21 as presented.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Ready?
Commissioner Rettenbach? Yes.
I move to approve the contract between the Ottawa County Juvenile Detention Center and the Leelanau County Family Court for placement of court-ordered youth placed in their facility, pending council review and approval. Second.
Second?
Support.
All those in
Whoever.
favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes 7-0. That brings us to number 2, the area agency and the resolution. Commissioner Westcott.
I move to approve Leelanau County Resolution Number 2019-XXX fiscal year 2020-22 multi-year plan of the Area Agency on Aging of Northwest Michigan, pending council review and approval.
Second.
This would be a roll call vote.
Who seconded
Sudas.
Commissioner Wessel,
Yes.
Commissioner Ansorgi,
Yes.
Chairman Bonnet,
Yes.
Commissioner Lautner,
Yes.
Commissioner Rettenbach,
Yes.
Commissioner Rushton,
Yes.
Commissioner Sudas Little,
Yes.
7-0.
Thank you. And that brings us to the late edition number 1 in the sheriff's office with it's concerning the car.
Chairman, please.
Yes.
I was wondering if you can tell us why we did delete the contract for animal control.
why we didn't, the
Why- why-
Grand
why?
Traverse Band asked us to take it off, as far as I know. They're looking at the contract again. That's what I was
Okay.
told.
Okay,
Was that correct?
That's correct.
all right, thank you.
Commissioner Wright.
I would make the motion to approve the settlement agreement and the mutual release in Circuit Court Case Number 19-10317-CZ, David W. Cook versus Leelanau County Sheriff's Office et al. As presented.
Support? Was there any questions?
I
Go
would
ahead.
like to hear a little bit about this.
I think we all did. And I think it was resolved nicely.
Well, she wants to hear about it.
Yeah, go ahead.
I can give you a snapshot of how it
Snapshot.
all
Yep, please.
happened as briefly as I
Yeah.
can. On the 23rd of April, we received notice that a vehicle had been towed off private property as an abandoned vehicle from the storage units on Maple City Road. Bruce from Bingham Towing, familiar with cars, and he's the only person in the county that can tow and handle abandoned vehicles. He's registered with the state. He called us and said, you know, I towed this vehicle, you're going to get the paperwork on it. It's worth a lot of money. Typically abandoned vehicles are either wrecked or abandoned at the yard or scrapped. The tow company, they're just turned over to the tow company and they recover as much cost for them handling those. When a vehicle is worth more than that, and we're required by state law, I think it's 257, 252, to auction those vehicles if the owner's not identified. So we started that process right then and there because Bruce from Bingham said it's a very valuable vehicle. We had the state do a manual lookup through Secretary of State that did not identify an owner. On April 30th, we received the formal TR-52 form, which is a state form for abandoned vehicles, with no owner listed on it from records from the state. From that point, we have a mandatory 20-day waiting period before we can do anything. By the 21st of May, there's still no owner coming forward. On the 30th, per the abandoned vehicle law, with the help of Laurel Evans, we advertised the abandoned vehicle and that we would be holding an auction on that vehicle. And this is where the snafu with the sheriff's office came in, and it's totally my fault. There's a line in that law, which the law is very long, but I missed, and it basically says that if there is no owner identified, rather than waiting 5 days to hold a sale like we did, which is spelled out in how you're supposed to conduct these auctions, there's another section that contradicts that and says you must wait 30 days if an owner is not listed. So we continued on. On the 4th of June, we had the vehicle available for people to look at Bingham Towing. And on the 5th, we started the auction and also became aware that a person had come forward that thought, because Haggerty wrote some articles, I guess, online, and someone saw those, knew of a guy that had a friend that had this kind of car. They found him. He in turn got a hold of a Mr. Cook in Illinois who was the owner of the car. But he couldn't prove it at that time. He had no title because of moving and things in boxes and whatnot. So we continued on with the auction. On June 11th, Mr. Cook hired a local attorney. On the 13th of June, our agency, the storage facility, and Bingham Towing were all served with a notice of a lawsuit to reclaim that vehicle. And they filed that with the court, and on June 17th, Judge Elsenheimer issued a restraining order to stop the auction. And at that point, we stopped the auction. And also, when we were served with notice, I put together a packet and shipped it to Chet, who shipped it to the county attorney. And from that point, they took over, and we were always hoping the owner would be found because the vehicle is unique and very valuable. I think the auction price was up over $58,000 for the car when it was halted. So the attorneys worked out a settlement, which we have a copy of. Basically, Mr. Cook, the owner, paid our costs for the advertising that we did, paid Bingham for towing and storage, and paid the original storage facility where the vehicle had been at least since 2012 and maybe into the early 2000s. It's just kind of murky there. So the owner paid quite a bit of money.
So how
and,
had he
took
lost track of his vehicle?
Well, what happened is that he gave it to an acquaintance to do some work on it. The acquaintance said he had a place to store it and work on the car. And the owner just assumed that that's what was happening for all these years.
Still getting work done. Gotcha.
What happened is that person defaulted on loans. The storage place got taken over by somebody else. He just left the car there, and there the car sat.
Wow.
Yeah. And we don't do these every day. This is the first one I've had since I've been here. So, and believe me, I'll remember. I got to wait 30 days.
Well, very good exercise in lost vehicles, I guess.
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you very much. Have a good
Thank
evening.
you.
All right, then that brings us to the Register of Deeds and the waiver of insurance. We do have the email and the information about it, that, our attorneys have said that it's okay.
Okay.
Commissioner Lauder.
Okay. I would move to forward the request to waive board policy regarding insurance. We already did that. So I'm going to make a motion to
waive.
just to waive the,
From there on forward.
right. That's it. We're just going to waive the,
You have to read the rest of it.
oh, well, to waive the board policy regarding the insurance requirements for corporate services company, CSC.
Support.
Is that better?
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes 7-0. So then the online fees? Commissioner Russell?
I move to approve the new proposed fee structure for online copies for the Register of Deeds office effective when the new software and website go live.
Support.
Commissioner Silvestro?
Yeah, and I appreciate that our Register of Deeds is here, Dorothy. I had a couple of questions, so I don't know if you want to come up.
Try.
Well, and I apologize, I was going to slip over to your office and kind of ask you one-on-one, but we've
Absolutely,
had an
anytime.
interesting week, so haven't had a chance to do that. I know you were saying that you had very carefully thought through this, and I appreciate the fact that you were trying to be fair and that the law gives you the right to raise fees. But I kept looking for what you were trying to defray. I mean, in a way, because we can do some things doesn't necessarily mean we should. And as I understand, there is a fund that you do have that's like $55,000.
The automation fund, right?
And I don't know where these fees that you're
They-
talking about go.
They go to the general fund.
They go to the general
Yes,
fund.
yes, they do not go to the automation, they go to the general fund.
That was one of the questions that I had.
Yep.
So I don't know, I'm sure that going to the general fund is a good thing for the clerk's office.
No, for the county.
For the whole county, for the whole county as a whole. But it isn't being used to release any of the commitment towards your employees. I mean, they're funded out of general fund dollars.
Correct.
So,
Yes.
and that's a line item, and you're just set for that. So it's not a matter of you're not raising it to defray the costs.
No, it's just going to the general fund like the money always has.
I still have a problem with this, and it's not, I understand what you're trying to do,
Yeah.
and I know that there's already fees being charged. It's the raising of the funds when there isn't a need.
Yeah. But
You're
we're
not trying to cover anything.
Right, no, we're
You're
not
just-
really raising the funds. Statute says charge $1 per page, and that's what most all counties do. Well, I shouldn't say most all counties do charge $1 per page, but they also charge a convenience fee or like a track fee. Like if you were to come in and search our index, our track books and maps in the office, we're going to charge you $1 a minute. Online, the track information is there, but we're not really charging for it. Barb, Kurt, years ago, never, set that up to do that, and I think we really should be doing that to make it as equal in the office as it is online.
So, I can understand that for title searches or for other groups, but for individual taxpayers, I know Treasury has a system where if you are looking at your property and you want information on your property, there's no charge. They have some way of
Right. There will
finding
be
that out.
Right, there'll be a free search.
That's what I'm looking for.
Yes, there will be a free name search.
Okay.
But if you want to print copies or anything, they're going to charge you because we don't know if you're searching by name or legal description, but there will be a free name search.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
You very much. Then that brings us to number 5, the ESRI. Commissioner Ansari.
I move to approve the renewal of the maintenance agreement between Leelanau County and ESRI in the amount of $5,475.81, with funds to come from the Data Processing Fund 636.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry, we have to have a second.
I
Did
support
you?
that, yes.
Okay, I thought, okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I would like to make the motion to purchase an extended maintenance agreement with Dell for the data backup server and the storage device for an additional 2 years at a cost of $4,466.23, with those funds to come from the Data Processing Fund 636.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes 7-0. So that brings us to the appointment for the Brownfield Commissioner Sutis Little.
I move to appoint John Ahrens, be appointed to fill the vacancy of Brownfield Redevelopment Authority Board, term to expire December 31st, 2020.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes 7-0. That brings us to the Park and Rec Commission, the Grub Shack. Commissioner West.
Yes, I move to approve the expansion of the old Settlers Park Grub Shack, pending council review and approval in the amount of $27,550, with funds to come from the Parks and Recreation budget.
Support.
All those in favor?
I was just going to
Oh, I'm
ask the
sorry.
question.
Yeah, questions?
What happened to the donations that were allocated to?
So, in the original motion was that we would only allocate up to $10,000 and pay for the grub shack. No donations have come forward yet. So, Parks and Recreation felt that it was important to go ahead and not only fix the building, but also then add onto the building in hopes that donations come in Worst case scenario is Parks and Rec would pay for the full $27,000. But they're quite certain that the donations will come in to help pay that, in which case they would just bring more money into the Parks and Rec budget, or perhaps they would have to go back to the general fund at whatever time, timing-wise, that those would come in.
So I assume that Parks and Recs initially allocated $10,000 for this project.
Yes, a while back.
So what is Parks and Rec not going to do from their budget this year in order to make up the $17,550?
Commissioner Ansel, you have his hand up.
Well, I'm assuming, is somebody going to answer
I
that
think
question?
Todd has the answer.
Are you through?
After my question gets answered, yeah.
Okay. Commissioner West.
This is in the budget, and up to this amount of money, and this was our priority. So if we get a collection, we'll do something that's a lower priority with the money that we take in. But it's well within the budget of the Parks and Recreation Commission, and this was the first priority they had on spending that money.
Commissioner Ansel.
Would you say it was in the budget? This item was itemized in the budget for $27,550? Because I don't remember that.
Can
If,
I
you know.
respond to that?
Is he?
Yeah, that,
Okay, all right. Yeah.
As the county administrator tried to explain, that in the budget, we don't have, it wasn't designated for this, but it was designated for the Parks and Recreation to spend during this fiscal year for what they thought the Parks and Recreation needed. And this was their top priority. And we've been talking about the Grab Shack for, well, since Mr. Bunnick was the chair of the Parks and Recreation Commission.
A while.
Right. I've worked on this thing, but I believe they have like a $50,000 line or $40,000 line for capital improvements. And that's what that money's coming from, capital improvements, and that's what they're considering this. That's usually how they do it, just from my experience. Yes.
This was supposedly pending council review and approval. Did that occur?
It's under review right now.
So the motion needs to be amended to include that.
I did. It was stated that way.
Okay, I didn't hear that.
It's, yeah, pending council review and approval.
I see it says that here. I didn't hear him say it, but if he did,
Okay.
okay.
Commissioner Locke.
Okay. The other piece that goes to this, perhaps as far as the budget goes, is it's likely that this work wouldn't be done until 2020. So would probably come out of the budget for 2020.
Why are we approving?
As of right now, there's approximately, I just looked at this probably after last week's meeting, I saw there's about $45,000 unspent in the capital outlay budget. So I think if that's not, knowing that this gets approved and it's not touched, we would address that at budget. Knowing it rolls back into the general fund, we would propose just rolling it into next year's budget in addition to whatever else the board would choose to approve. This isn't it's not a get approval now, spend the $45,000 on something else, then hope for this next year. That's not really how we would do it.
Right.
We would bring that to your attention if we saw that
At budget
occurring.
time. Right.
Commissioner Ansel, did you want to address
Why
that?
are we approving it, is my question. You know, I can't support this just for that reason.
Yeah, and my fear would be is that that would increase their budget by $27,550, and then in 2020, when we do another budget, then they're going to have a higher number that their budget looks like. And they're going to want to continue having that amount. So I would not be in favor of us voting for it if this is going to not be done until next year. And then we can discuss this at budget time. So Commissioner Lauder.
It probably could be addressed at budget time, considering all of that, and considering it's probably a 2020 build date. But I do believe the most pressing thing was to get the contractor locked in, because we haven't been able to get a contractor locked into doing the job. It's I don't know if it's just not big enough. But they've been very busy. The economy's booming, so it's hard to get a contractor to do work. I think they want to lock the contract in, so that will be the first thing in 2020 that the contractor does.
Commissioner, and I would remind commissioners that we did this with the Parks and Recreation Commission last year when we made purchase of a tractor. And the tractor couldn't be delivered until after the fiscal year, and we did the same process on that. When you're scheduling construction projects or buying big equipment, you do the best job you can in the timing. We had I think three bids on this, and this was $50,000 less than another bid we had. We need to lock this in so we can get this fixed, or we ought to agree to tear it down, because it's an eyesore and it's a problem. And we need to take care of our resources, and this is one of our resources.
Any other comments? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
I believe it passes 4-3.
And Sarvey, Rushton, Bonnie.
Yes. The motion passes 4-3. All right, so then that brings us on to the administration annual MERS conference. Commissioner Rushton.
I would move to appoint Administrator Chet Janik as the officer delegate to attend the 73rd Annual MERS Conference, and to appoint Michelle Crocker as the alternate officer delegate at a cost of $175 per person. Funds to come from the Board of Commissioners travel line ending in 860 and the Board of Commissioners education line ending in 960.
Support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes 7-0. That brings us to review of financials. Are there any questions about that? Commissioner Lautner?
I just have one question on distributor CMP vests, replacing some vests, and just if we could, it seems to be over the spending threshold, but there's a Department of Justice grant involved, so I just wanted a little bit more information on that if I could get it. But I will recommend we pay it tonight and just answer my questions. And also in late claims, we had, I think it was for buildings and grounds, from Leelanau Conservancy, $976 for, I think it was native plants. And so what project is that, or where are these plants going? Is that the hillside? Chet's not here. Laurel, do you know? Is that where they were doing the plastic on the hillside and they were killing?
That wouldn't normally be a building and grounds.
Yeah.
No. I think that Building and Grounds has been working in conjunction with the Conservation District plant specialist on the hillside.
Over here?
Right, but I'm not sure if that's what that's.
Oh, you're not sure if that's what it's for? Yeah, that's something I think of.
Can we get back to you on that, or I can, if you have just a second?
I was just,
$976?
yeah, it's $1,000.
It's very suspicious because it's almost exactly the same amount as the soil, or the
Okay.
soil conservation
Actually,
district.
I'm wrong. I'm not very good with direction.
West.
Which way is width, but it says northwest hill back of,
Yeah. that is
Boiler.
it
the-
says courthouse.
Courthouse, okay.
Okay.
$976 for 120 quarts of wildflowers and grasses, and 248 plugs of wildflower and grasses.
Okay, who's doing that project?
I don't know, it's signed off by the maintenance director.
So that is that, up
We
on the hill.
can find out if you want.
Well, yeah, I was just curious as to why we're landscaping the hillside. Is it just for the betterment of the campus, or is it a project, or is it, I'm just curious.
I
about
was
it.
under the impression they were gonna use it as a feature so that, but it was the conservation districts. They were gonna create this feature so that people could see what they have available,
Gotcha.
but I don't know why Jerry signed up.
But because they'll be planted on our campus, we're perhaps purchasing them, maybe?
We'll find out and we'll
Okay.
send you an email, that's
No,
okay.
that's fine. That was it.
Any others?
For me.
Seeing none, how about any committee reports, recommendations, or resolutions? No?
Did you make?
Special reports? I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, I lost my spot on the agenda, I apologize.
We're not there yet.
Sorry.
Commissioner.
Yes, as just a point of information, Northern Lakes Community Mental Health Group is having their monthly meeting in Leelanau County next month. It will be in the courthouse. It'll be the third Thursday of the month. They do have that meeting throughout the region, but they've never come to Leelanau County before, and I asked them if they would schedule a meeting here so that residents here that might want to attend. So we'll send that agenda out, but you may want to attend that meeting or at least let people know. Thank you.
Then now we're down to public comment.
What time?
Seeing none, we'll move on to financials.
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
Do you have a
you want to do
commissioner
public
comment?
comment? Go ahead.
I would direct.
My comment was you skipped over Commissioner
Commissioner
comment.
comment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's his
Did you want to
comment.
comment?
I just commented.
Ty, what time is the community mental health meeting?
I was thinking it's not.
So I would move to approve claims and accounts in the amount of $225,048.64.
Support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
I would move to approve post audit claims and accounts in the amount of $1,374,895.60.
Support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes 7-0, and we are adjourned.
Good job, Will.
Yeah.
Yes.